This is Lynn Welsen from Welsen's Place out in the country. We've got a Christmas tree farm out here, and I'm going to show you how to make a custom wreath. First of all, what you want to do is pick the nicest greens. If you've got a smaller wreath, you're going to want your smaller pieces. And the best greens, I use my clippers here, the best greens for the wreath is the tips. If you get inside the tree, your greens aren't going to be quite as nice. They've got a nice finished edge here, and so I'm going to get me some greens to do a mini wreath, which is a 12-inch wreath. And I'm going to do a combination. This is Scotch pine. I'm going to do a combination of Scotch pine and firs, Fraser fir and balsam fir. And I don't need too many. But what we do here is we just cut down a tree that's not quite sellable. For whatever reason, it hasn't been trimmed right or it just grew funky. And so I get the whole tree here, and right now I'm doing 30 or 40 wreaths a season. And now here we are at the wreath table. This unit here is at the top, and it's called a clamp, a wreath clamp. It has an attachment here that goes down to the pedal, and if you notice, when you push the pedal down, go back up, and you see the wreath clamp closes. And what that does is it clamps your wire wreath rings shut after your greens are in there. Okay, now once we have the wreath ring set up in the clamp, we're going to start gathering our greens. And the best advice that I got when I was taught how to do wreaths is to get as many greens as you can hold in your hand. And I'm doing a combination of the Scotch, and then I'm going to add some firs and balsam on top. Is to get a bunch, as many as you can hold, so your hand is completely full. And then when you can't hold any more, add one more. And that's the advice, because the more greens you have in the wreath, the nicer it's going to look. And I'm going to hold these flat down and clamp this wreath machine, and it's going to clamp over the greens, and it folds down on both sides and holds it tight. Then you rotate the wreath ring as you go, and then you'll go all the way around and come back underneath. Alright, now while I'm grabbing the greens here, I wanted to show you there's a front and there's a back to each side. If you notice, the bark is lighter on the back, and the greens kind of curve forward from the back to the front. So when you're getting your greens, you want to lay them fronts, not backs, because if you lay your backs, you'll have a different color and a different flow to your greens. When I'm laying them out, I try and do a spread across, and I also start with longer ones in the back and continue to get shorter greens toward the front. And that gives you a nice look as it comes forward. Now I'm going to add my firs, and you can see I have several different types of firs. Now these backs are very evident, real easy to see. You always want on your front. I'm going to get a longer one first, because I want my longer ones toward the back. Not always possible, not always ideal, but I try to get that, because you get a nicer look. Okay, now I'm going to put my last green in here. And you always, you try and get a pretty green for the front, if you can, if you've got it, because that's going to be the most showy part, is right at the front. I'm going to hold it down flat and clamp it shut. Now the wreath ring is starting to bend a little bit, so I'm going to hold it down on this side while I clamp. And you can see the clamps it real tight here. And then we're going to move on to our next ring, and then I'm going to show you how to finish the wreath. Now, as you can see, I have most of my wreath done. All the greens are going in the same direction. I have one ring left, and it's hidden under the greens here. So I want to go ahead and put that in my slot so I know where it's at. And I'm gathering my greens, and I have my furs here that I'm putting on the top for my last piece. And then we get to decorate. That's my favorite part. And we want to get a nice look here. I'm kind of getting to the end of the greens, so I have to kind of make it look good. See if I've got a nice piece left here. Okay. Now, what I need to do is hold on to this with this hand. I'm going to have to pull up underneath the greens. As you can see there, I've got my clamp in my ring positioned in my clamp, and then I'm going to push up as hard as I can on these and slide these underneath. I don't want them stems sticking out. So I want to make sure everything's covered. And then I'm going to start my clamp. And like I said before, the wreath ring's starting to bend, as you can see, so I'm going to straighten it out and put my last piece. And then what I do is make sure it's all tucked underneath. You can see that where the little branches are at, stems, in there. And I want to make sure the good greens from my first stack goes right over the top of that, and then there you have it. There's a nice mini wreath. This is the mini wreath that we finished, and let's see the size of this. Now I said 12-inch, but what we have here is an 8-inch ring, so it's smaller than the 10-inch. But when you're finished, your wreath actually comes out to 14 or 15 inches wide once you get your greens on it. So it makes a nice little wreath, and like I said, this is an 8-inch ring, and that's how it comes out. Now we're going to decorate, and you can see I've placed some pine cones here. What you'll find is when you get ready to decorate, that sometimes you'll find gaps in your greens, and the pine cones are a great place to fill those in so that you get a nice round wreath. And you can use any kind of pine cone. I collect pine cones wherever I go, and some of them I collect when they're more closed than others. But there's all kinds of different colors and designs, and some people actually bake their cones. Here's another small cone. It's kind of neat. Bake their cones in the oven for about 10 minutes, and it turns them into a nice patina brown, and it gets rid of all your insects and everything. But I don't worry about that too much. I've done it once or twice, but I like the natural color of the cones. So I'm going to take my glue gun and just hold it there for a minute. And add some glue. Hold it there for a minute or so. And then it dries. I try and remember exactly the placement, because as you see, some I have pointing this way, some I have pointing forward. So I use plenty of glue. Some people limit the amount of glue, but I want my wreaths to be nice and sturdy. So sometimes I would rather use a little bit more than a little bit less. Okay, there's my cones. Now what I'm going to do is, I picked up my bow, my ribbon, and you want to take a look over here. You can see all the different colored ribbons that are available. I've got 3 big boxes here, and what I do is I just go to clearance after Christmas at Menards and all the different stores and Hobby Lobby, and end up with all different choices. So this is the one I chose, and I made a bow here, and I'll show you how to make a bow in a different video. And I'm going to put this bow on the top, and I've got a piece of wire holding this bow, so I'm going to tip up my wreath and shove that wire through. Sometimes it's hard to feel coming through, but I've got it here. And then I'm going to take that wire and wrap it around a stem, just whatever one's available. And then I've got my ribbon there. And a lot of times I'll take my glue gun because I'm kind of particular about how I want my ribbon to sit. And I'll just put a shot of glue and fold it down the way I like it to sit. Okay, and you'll see I have these strings of glue. I just kind of pull them off, but you can take a hair dryer and dry it real quick and it'll get all your strings off at once. I don't do that, but it can be done. And then I have a little, like a wire clamp here. I got a little set of these at Menards, and I've got about 6 of them in a set. And what I'm going to do, this came in a clump, these berries. I'm going to add some berries to my wreath. And you see here the outside paint came off of this berry. So one thing I want to mention is these particular berries are not for outdoor use. Here's a berry that's more sturdy. It's made for being outdoors. You can see it's a little thicker covering on it. Now you can take these and you can spray some varnish so they will last outside if you want it outside. But most of the wreaths are used in between the screen door, the storm door, and the hang on the door inside the house. So you really don't have to worry about that too much. Now when you do your grave pillows and stuff like that, you have to make sure that you have outdoor decorations. And it says right there, all weather. So I'm going to cut this piece and a couple of these, and I'm just kind of going to place them in here the way I think might look nice. And they sell them in bunches. Woo! Got one in my shirt. They sell them in bunches, and so I just go ahead and buy the bunch and then clip off what I want. I think the berries look nice when they go in a direction, somewhat of a direction. So I'm going to kind of bend this a little bit. Okay. And kind of make a little circle here. Usually 3 little bunches is enough, even for a large wreath. Okay, now I'm going to take my glue gun, since I like the position of those. There's another glue string. So I'll start with this one, and I just kind of line the branch with a little glue gun. And you know, the glue is hot. It is a hot glue gun, so you have to be careful not to get it on your hands. Some people have a pan of cool water nearby, just in case. And then I'm going to do this one here. I'm going to try and remember where I wanted it. Okay, now there I have my basic wreath. And next we'll see if we can dig for a few decorations to add to that. This wreath really kind of looks good without too much added here. So I just grabbed a couple jingle bells, and I've got gold and red and green, and I'm just going to hot glue these right on here. And it just really just these 3 little additions seems to be enough for this wreath, I think. Don't want to overdo it. And there you have it. There's our wreath, our mini wreath. You can see here I have hanging 3 mini wreaths. They all look totally different. This is the last one I just finished. And then I have something that looks a little more country-ish with joy and the ribbon that's wound up. Here I've got the cardinal, and this is just to give you more ideas on decorating. There's all kinds of different ways, and every wreath is unique.